Okay, everybody, we have reached the bottom of the hour, so let's get going with today's L10 webinar, Perfecting Your Virtual Presence to Connect with Your Audience, sponsored by CMR Institute. My name is Tim Sosby. I'm Editorial Director for L10. It's my pleasure to welcome you today, and I'm going to start with some housekeeping items for you here. And then I'm going to turn things over to our speakers to get going. We're going to have a fun program today. I think you're going to enjoy it. We are planning a 60-minute session for you. You'll notice that your phones are on mute, so any questions you have, any comments you have along the way, please do type them into the control panel, into the questions window on that control panel there on the right side of your screen. Just type in the question or the comment as they occur to you while they're fresh in your mind, and we will try to get to them as quickly as possible throughout today's program. Also on the control panel, I wanted to point out the handouts window. There's several items you may wish to download, including some information on today's presentation. There's a download handout from CMR that's going to give you some information on what we're talking about today, and it's also great for taking notes as well. So you can download that right now if you'd like and print that out and have it as a companion piece, or download it to refer back to later. There's also some other L10 items there in the handouts window. You can download any or all of these. Just highlight the title, and the computer should walk you through downloading right to your desktop. If you have any troubles with any of that, you can reach out to me at my email address here, and I'll be glad to get that handout to you offline. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand in the L10 Self-Directed Learning Library. I'm going to send you an email about an hour after today's webinar ends with a link to that recording, and you'll find it through the L10 website even sooner than that email arrives to you. And speaking of sharing, as you leave today's webinar, a follow-up survey is going to appear on a separate browser window. Please do take a moment when you leave today and share your thoughts with us on that survey. We'd love to have your feedback as we produce these programs for you. And again, along those lines, there's my email address. I'll share that later in today's program as well. If I can help with anything around your webinar or your L10 membership, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, with all of that said, I'm going to turn things over to our speakers now. Today's program, again, is sponsored by CMR Institute. We appreciate that opportunity to work with them on today's webinar, and I know you're going to enjoy the program. So let me turn things over to our first speaker today, Michelle O'Connor. Michelle is President and CEO of CMR Institute, and she's a member of the L10 Board of Directors. Michelle, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Tim. It's my great pleasure today to introduce Greg Justice. Greg is a professor in the School of Performing Arts at Virginia Tech. He teaches courses in acting and directing and has directed over 50 plays. As a professional actor, he has appeared in over 100 theatrical productions and numerous television and radio commercials. Greg is also a keynote speaker, an executive coach, and a trainer. He has conducted presentations for multiple Fortune 500 companies, including many life sciences organizations, and tens of thousands of individuals have had the benefit of participating in his workshops. So welcome, Greg. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I want to thank Michelle. I want to thank Sharon Lustig, and I want to thank Tim Sosby. They've been just incredible in terms of helping me out to make my job easy for today, and I'm really honored to be asked to be a presenter for this particular webinar. So let's get started. As Michelle said, I'm an associate professor in theater. I teach acting and I teach directing, but yet I do all these workshops in using acting techniques in business presentations, using acting techniques in interviews for jobs. I do executive coaching, and so it's a subject that not many people around the country do. So I'm really proud of the work that I've done. In fact, Michelle and I go way back, and one of the very first workshops I did years ago was for CMR. And so it's kind of nice to loop back around years later and be invited to do some more work with her and her organization. So thanks for having me. So what are we going to do today? Why is this acting teacher here with you? Let me see if I can get the slides to move forward here. We're going to do a little, I want to start with a trivia contest, basically. And it kind of defines what we do within my field, and I'm still not able to get the slide to move forward.
Hey, let me jump in and help you with that.
Thank you, Tim.
You might try clicking again on the screen now.
I'll just tell you to click forward then, if that's okay. So
that's fine.
Go ahead. So why is an acting teacher and a theater director your workshop facilitator today when you're all in the life sciences? That's kind of the question I want to toss out to everyone to begin with. So we can go to the next slide. Because we're going to explore techniques that actors do both in the live theater and in television and film in order to try to captivate and keep their audience's attention on them for longer periods of time. That's simply what my workshops are about. So the question that leads off to this trivia contest is, why is it that we can remember an actor's lines for so long, for so many years? Next slide, please. So here's the trivia contest. I'm gonna bring up a slide. We don't have the time. If this was a face-to-face workshop, I'd ask people to chime in. If it was a different kind of format, I'd ask you to do the trivia and write in the answers, those kinds of things. Because we're in this particular format with this go-to webinar, I'm going to move through them, but I would like you to try to answer the trivia question yourself and see how good you do on this. We're going to bring up a slide. You're going to name the movie. You're going to name the character. You're going to name the actor, and also you're going to name the famous line that this actor says. Let's go to the next slide, please, Tim. So there, the character on the right, or I'm sorry, on the left. Most of you should know who that is. Go ahead and hit the next one. The famous line is, "There's no place like home." The movie is The Wizard of Oz. Next slide. And that's Dorothy, and the actress is Judy Garland. This movie came about in 1939, almost 100 years ago. We still remember her line today. Next slide. Next trivia. Going back further, anyone know who this actor is? Anyone remember his famous line? Go ahead, let's give it away, Tim. It is Stella. It's from the movie A Streetcar Named Desire. It's also from from a play that was adapted for that movie. This character is Stanley Kowalski. And the actor is Marlon Brando, considered to be one of the greatest actors in America in the 20th century. There we go. Oh, and let's go a little bit more contemporary. Anyone know who this is? And you can hit the next one. The famous line is, "You shall not pass." And that's from the movie The Lord of the Rings, the very first episode. They made 3 different ones or 4 different ones. I can't even remember. And that actor is, next slide, Gandalf. And the actor's name is Ian McKellen. Let's do one more. Going back again, 1939, same year as The Wizard of Oz. Next slide. Famous line is, "Frankly, my dear," you know it. And the movie is Gone with the Wind. Next slide. The actor is Rhett Butler. The character is Rhett Butler. The actor is Clark Gable. And I think we've got another one. So what is it? What do these actors do that makes us watch them so closely and remember the things that they say for so many years? Next slide. Got one more here before we go and totally answer that question. The actor on the right, anyone know who he is? And the famous line? This one's a little harder. It's a more kind of obscure movie that hasn't been watched a lot lately. This is Dustin Hoffman, and the character's name, you can hit the next slide too for me, Tim, please. The character says, "I'm walking here." It's from a movie called Midnight Cowboy with Jon Voight. It won tons of Academy Awards. And actually what's interesting about this famous line, "I'm walking here," is that it was not in the original movie script. The way they were filming the movie in New York City, they had set up blockades. They were going to have Dustin Hoffman's character and Jon Voight's character walk across a very busy street in New York City in Manhattan. And for some reason or other, a cabbie blew through the blockades and almost hit Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight. It slammed on its brakes, and Dustin Hoffman, while in character, takes his hand, you can see it there on the car, slams it down on the car hood, and in character goes, "I'm walking here." And that line became the most famous line from that movie, and it wasn't even in the script. Next slide, please. So if you ask an actor film, television, or live theater. What's their main objective when they're in the movie or on stage? They will tell you that their main objective is they want to try to create a character that is satisfactory to themselves, the director, and their audience. But because actors have egos, if you dive a little bit further down and say, do you have another objective? Give me the next slide, please, Tim. If an actor is honest, they will tell you. Next one. They want to keep an audience's attention on them for as long a time as possible. And their third objective is they want to have the audience remember what they're saying for as long a time as possible. And one more slide, Tim, please. So what is often your main objective when you meet with a business peer, a colleague, or members of your community? Is it not the same? Don't you want to have them watch you for as long a time as possible? And don't you want to try to have them remember your words for as long a time as possible? This is what my workshops are based on. I've done them for many years. We could go to the next slide, just as a slide for the rest of the seminar. That's the title of what we're doing. And what I'd like to ask each of you to do now, if you don't mind, because I don't work with PowerPoint anymore for this particular piece. I'll be the talking head for this session. So if you want to slide me down or slide the card down so that you have myself a little bit larger on your device, I think you can get more out of this workshop, because this is actually going to be a participatory webinar, not just a talking head webinar, because that's how the best way to learn something is to do it. The word act comes from the Greek word to do. So we're going to be doing a couple of the things that I do today. Prior to 2019, my workshops were all about face-to-face conversations and how do you improve your communication work when you're in face-to-face situations, be it with one person, with 2 or 3 or 4 people, with a group of 40, or you're talking at a conference to 400 or 800 people. Actors have developed all sorts of techniques over the millennium that they use to try to keep people's attention on them for longer periods of time, and that's what I like to share. So most of my workshops could go anywhere from 2, 3, 4 hours, 8 hours. I do up to 2-day workshops. So doing it in a 1-hour format, I decided what I wanted to do when I was invited to this session was kind of give you some highlights from each one of the workshops that I do over an extended period of time. They're kind of the more fun ones. They're the easier ones to grab a hold of that you can try to integrate into the work that you do when you're working, and especially working online, because in 2019, of course, our world changed and everything moved to online. And what's interesting about the online world is a lot of what I did in my face-to-face workshops can port over to online work, but there's also other kinds of things that happen in online experiences, especially, you're working with a camera, you need lighting, you need spaces, you need backgrounds, those kinds of things. And I don't have time to go into a lot of those things today, but hopefully we can cover one. So the first thing that I want to talk about is that I think giving a good virtual presentation, giving a good Zoom conference, a good GoToMeeting conference, again, whether it be to one person or multiple people, the key ingredient for giving a good presentation in this millennium, which we are now at 2022, the key ingredient is passion and energy. If you're not passionate about what you are talking about, and if there's not a sense of enthusiasm and energy in you giving that particular talk, please don't expect your audience to be interested in wanting to listen to you. Because the way our society is, we multitask, we have short attention spans, we bounce around. So one of the ways to keep audiences on you for longer periods of time is to come at them with a sense of energy and a sense of passion. So how do you get that energy and how do you get that passion? One of the things that I don't normally tell people to do online or in a face-to-face is read material aloud. It's a great way to lose your audience. But I'm going to ask for your indulgence here. I'm going to read a little bit of a newspaper article. You can see see it says, one person's ideal teacher is another's nightmare. And as I read through this, it's pretty short, but as I read through this, I want you to substitute the word teacher for your job position. And I think this thing will make sense. So here it is. This is from the Orlando Sentinel. The article is a bit old. It's been around for some time, but I think the subject and the content of what it talks about is still really important today. It says, researchers have spent decades trying to find out what makes a terrific teacher. Substitute your job title. What they've learned is that a teacher can be perfect for another student and bad for another. They've discovered that teaching is a hard subject to measure and that their findings are often contradictory. Put plainly, it's hard to say what makes a great teacher. One of the interesting issues, said Gordon Greenwood, an associate professor or an education professor who studies these things at the University of Florida in Gainesville, is whether you learn more under the prof who pushed you and gave you a hard time or from the popular one that everyone liked. The next category is called high marks for Dr. Fox. It says, the characteristic that college students seem to value, at least according to the teacher evaluations they fill out, is enthusiasm. Yet, enthusiasm is not a hallmark of some college teachers who tend to read from their notes or in a moment of inspiration, emphatically underline something on the blackboard. Called the Dr. Fox experiment, it involved a medical conference at which a group of doctors were to listen to a Dr. Michael Fox, who would lecture about a new technique. Fox was not a doctor. He was a soap opera actor who posed as a doctor, but the audience didn't know that. He got up there and he called on all of his abilities to emphasize and enthusiastically expound rather than acting like the dry academic type who doesn't deviate far from their notes, the way profs often deliver their lectures, Greenwood said. At the end, they not only gave him an almost perfect rating for his performance, but they all said they learned a lot when in fact he didn't tell them anything. Now notice, this was not a teacher talking to a group of students. This was a soap opera actor posing as a doctor talking to doctors at a medical conference. And they said they learned a lot when he didn't tell them anything. But they also loved his performance. So I'm not advocating that next week, if you've got a sales meeting you're heading to, or you're going to give a presentation or teach a class, I'm not advocating you go in there, and start doing a dog and pony show, and do it as a musical. But the point I want to make is, in today's world, if you don't care about what you're talking about, I just don't think it's fair to ask people to care about listening. So you have to find ways to care about it. You've got to find passion, and then the delivery is about passion and energy. The other thing that this workshop is not about, my workshops are never about, is trying to teach you to start to act when you do the work that you do, even though you've got an acting teacher in here. Acting is a whole different thing. Acting is creating a character to present something for an audience, and that's not the work that you do. You are yourself when you present. And actually, we underestimate the power of just ourselves as being a really good attractor in the virtual world. When you log on to GoToMeeting or to Zoom, and you're seeing brand new people and they're seeing you for the first time, you have them in the palm of your hand because they've never seen you before. And a lot of times we demean ourselves by going, oh, they're not interested in me. It's just little old me. Why would they want to listen to me? So we knock ourselves down in terms of that. There's only one of you in this world. There's only been one of you, and there will only be one of you on this planet. And that is an attractor. So understand that and utilize that. I'm also here not to sell my kind of passion and energy. And that's because I'm in the performing arts world. So you can already see I'm pretty animated on the camera. I move a lot. I use gestures a lot. It's the same thing with face-to-face communication because movement pulls focus. We know that in the theater. Movement pulls focus. And if you just sit here and it's just a talking head and the only thing that's ever moving in your virtual world, this is the only thing that you're ever seeing, you're going to lose audience members in terms of watching you. So bringing gestures up at times, finding movements in the chair, all of those kinds of things can help keep people's audience's attention on you for a little bit longer period of time. I want to move into another thing that I do in all my workshops. It's something that I usually start with. I start with this question: what is Americans' number one fear? And we don't get to do this and get your answers, but if it's an audience of a couple hundred, I usually get 50 to 60 at the same time to call out loud. The number one fear is public speaking. Surveys have been taken for over 50 years on what Americans' number one fear is, and every time the number one answer comes back the same: public speaking. So most of us know that that's Americans' number one fear, but we don't examine it. And the first thing I want to do today is examine this a little bit. Why is it Americans' number one fear? Because you work in the public speaking world every day of your lives. So first of all, before I start to examine that, let's just take note of that. You're probably taking on Americans' number one fear in the job that you do on a daily basis. If not daily, at least several times, multiple times over the course of a week, where you are talking publicly to another human being. Again, be it 1, 12, 200, or 1200. That's public speaking. So you're working and doing work that is most people consider to be Americans' number one fear. So pat yourself on the back that you've been able to figure out how to do that. I think that's a helpful thing. Maybe I can help you a little bit more with it, especially if it's still there. Why is it Americans' number one fear? We in the theater believe it's the number one fear because public speaking makes us nervous. And if this was a face-to-face conversation or we could have an interactivity, I would now take about 20 minutes and ask people, what happens to you when you get nervous, or what do you see in other people when they get nervous? And we will very quickly, actually in about 5 or 10 minutes, we'll get a very long list of a lot of negative things. I hate when I start sweating, my hands sweat. I sweat in places I never knew was humanly possible. My hands shake when I'm holding my materials. My voice shakes when I start to talk. I can't swallow. I have dry mouth. My face flushes red. My neck flushes. My chest flushes red. My brain checks out on me. Isn't that interesting? That when at a time in our day or our work and our career, we need our brain. For some reason, at the time we need it the most, our brain decides, you know what, I'm just going to get up and check out on you. We have darting eyes when we're nervous. We have these appendages that hang off our body, these 2 arms and 2 legs that we don't know what to do with. So they start taking on a life of their own. We have these little tics and things that we start to do, playing with our hair and that kind of stuff, and playing with our fingers and that kind of stuff. So the list of bad things that happen when we get nervous is incredibly long. We in the theater state that that's why public speaking is Americans' number one fear. It's connected with this very long list of bad things. Most people don't like the emotion nervous. It's something we just want to avoid. I doubt there's anybody in this webinar, listening or attending, that's next week has a major presentation to give. You're being reviewed in your job. Your superiors are there. It's a major training session you're going to be doing. I doubt that any one of you, when you get up that morning, go, oh, I'm so looking forward to my nerves at this meeting today, and being sweaty and forgetting and having my tongue get tied and all of those kinds of things. We don't like that. So how do you not be nervous? How do you deal with Americans' number one fear? Because you have to in the job that you do. Here's what we do in theater. Another question. Nerves cause tension. Do you agree with that? Nerves cause tension. All right. So if you buy that, if you don't want to be nervous when you're giving a presentation, you don't want to be tense, you want to get as far as tension, away from tension as you can, what's the opposite of tense? That is, relax. So the sandbox to play in to not be nervous is relaxation. Easier said than done. But let's look at how other people outside of the theater arts and some other fields, how they deal with not being nervous. If this was a live session, I would ask, is there anybody in the room? Is there anybody amongst us that were in did sports, either in college or in high school. Then I would ask you, what sport did you do? Then my next question is, how long did you warm up in your sport before you started practice? I would get that answer. And usually, you know, if it's swimming and track, it's 15 minutes to an hour I get. If it's football, it's 1 hour, half an hour. If it's basketball, same kind of thing. And how long did you warm up before you actually went and played the event? Get that. Then I ask people, do I have any musicians in the room? My next question then is, how long do you warm up before you start practice? And then, how long do you warm up before you play a concert or a recital or a public performance? I ask if there's anybody in this room that are dancers or that do like to dance or used to dance. How long did you warm up before you started to practice dance? How long did you warm up before a performance or a recital or a presentation? And in every one of those fields, this is something that sports gets, dancers understand it, artists, musicians understand this, theater artists understand this. They warm up before they give their talk. So my question to everyone in this webinar is, do you warm up before you give a presentation? Do you warm up before you go and do a sales pitch? Do you warm up before you give a class? If you are warming up, good for you. I'm finding that the numbers are changing. I did a workshop yesterday. There were 32 participants. I was in Charlottesville, Virginia. And when I asked how many of you warm up before you give a presentation, I had a third of my class raise the hand. And it didn't used to be that way 10 years ago. It used to be about 2% to 5% of people would do some kind of physical warm up before they do the event. So this is something I'm asking of you. And I said that this was going to be, again, you want to pull my picture down so you can see me, because I'm going to make a move now. I'm going to slide my chair back here, and I'm going to ask you to stand up. I want everyone to do this. I can't see you, so I can't force you to do this, but I'd like you to give it a try. You'll be glad that you did if you stand up. You don't have to, I can't see you, so you're not going to, there's going to be looking a little silly, but I can't see you and no one else can see you. Let's do just a really quick physical warm up. So what we're going to do, I'll demo this first and then we'll all do it together. We're going to take our right arm and we're going to throw it off our body for 10 counts or 8 counts. So it looks like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we're going to do the same thing with our left arm. Throw the left arm off our body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I want you to throw your right leg. We can't see me in the camera here, but throw your right leg off the body, 8 counts, left leg off the body, 8 counts. Then we'll reduce the reps down by half. Right arm 4 counts, left arm 4 counts, right leg 4 counts, left leg 4 counts. Then reduce the reps down by half, 2 counts, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, and then we'll do 1 rep of 1, 1, 1, 1 to finish this. So if you haven't got up, I ask you, come on, join me. Stand up for a second. Join me in this and speak the numbers out loud while you do this with me. Right arm, throwing it off the counts, 8 counts, here we go, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, left arm next, then 1, 2, 3, 4, throw it off hard. Right leg, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, left leg, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right arm, 4 counts, 1, 2, 3, left arm, 1, 2, 3, right leg, 1, 2, 3, left leg, 1, 2, right arm, 2 counts, right, left, right leg, left leg, and 1 count, 1, 1, 1, 1. Good, we finished. You can have a seat again. You can stay standing since you're not in the room. But if you did this, first of all, I want to say thank you. And then I want you to examine, do you feel different? And then I would like you to answer this question to yourself. How do you feel different right here, right now? And hopefully the answer is, I kind of feel more awake. It's after lunchtime here. It's a Friday. It's been a long week. You got up out of your chair. You started moving around. You started doing things. We have the blood flowing through our body, and it energizes us. But it also adds to relaxation. Nerves cause tension. To find relaxation, we warm up, move muscles. This is what sports gets this. The purpose of a warm-up is to tone and condition the body on a daily basis so that hopefully you can play at your peak performance and that you don't get injured. Now, most of us aren't going to get injured, hopefully, in an online presentation, but it conditions and tones your instrument so that you might play at your peak performance. It's not a given, but athletes also know that if you do not warm up, you will never play at your peak performance. Musicians do know that if you don't play for 4 days, a week, 2 weeks, you can't just pick your instrument back up and start playing and be really great again. You're no longer conditioned. All right. So I want you to think about the same thing. If you're already doing exercise in your life, if you're running and if you're jogging and those kinds of things, you're warming up, you're toning and conditioning your body. Now I want you to make the mental statement when you go to do that exercise, you're doing this to be better at your job performance. You're doing this to add energy, to add passion when you come in to talk to people, especially online. So try giving yourself a little bit of a warm up. Today, I gave a 3-hour workshop yesterday. I was on the road for 5 hours yesterday. I woke up this morning. I was like, well, I'm kind of tired and I've got this other session to do today. So I did a half an hour warm up before I came to the session at 12:30. And I did that because you're giving me an hour of your time. And it should be my job as a speaker and a presenter to give you your time's worth. And one of the simple things that I can do to hopefully succeed at that is warm myself up. So I gave myself, because I was tired this morning, I gave myself a longer warm up than what I normally do so that I could give a good presentation today. And I hope that you're liking it so far. So warm up. Take 2 minutes, 4 minutes before you click and you sit down at that chair, before you go on with your online presentation. Fire yourself up so that get the blood moving through your system. That will help you be less nervous. My standard go-to to actors, if they do a scene or they do a performance, and after that performance is done, when I ask them, how did you feel? If I get a response from them that says, I was nervous today, my standard answer back to an actor every time is, your warm-up is not extensive enough. You need to do it longer. All right. So remember that. See if you can't give yourself a warm-up. What I want to go to next is some of the kind of negative statistics that exist for us while trying to present either face-to-face or especially online. I have several of them, but one of the ones that I want to really talk about today is this thing called 50, 40, 10. 50%. Studies have been done on what is it that human beings do that helps with effective communication. And it breaks down to 50%, 40%, 10%. 50% of effective communication happens through what a presenter, a speaker, someone in a virtual room does physically. 40% of effective communication happens through what human beings do vocally. And 10% of effective communication are in the words. 50, 40, 10. 50% of effective communication is what we do physically. That includes movement, it includes gestures, it includes nonverbal communication, body language choices, and physical energy. 40% of effective communication happens through what we do with our voice: volume, pitch, intonation, diction or articulation, dialect, vocal placement, articulation, timbre, tonality, those kinds of things. And 10%, only 10% of effective communication is in the words. Don't get me wrong, words are really important to our world and to communicating well. But in the theater world, for the actor, it's the actor takes the words and they use their body and or their voice to bring those words to life. And that's the job of the director also when working with actors. 50, 40, 10. And what I use to prove these statistics is I like to ask, how many of you in here do not like telephone interviews? And if this were a face-to-face group, you would see at least 40, 50, 60, 80% of people in any audience that I work with, when I say, do you like telephone, do you not like it, telephone interviews, 50 to 80% will raise their hands. So then I will ask those people why. And this is the answer. People don't like telephone interviews because you cannot see the person that you're trying to communicate with. In telephone interviews, your most powerful communicator, your body, is taken away. Just like that. All right. So let me bring it back. If I went small on you, I tried to turn off my camera there. I might have went small on you. That's what it did with me. We can't see people, and especially true in job interviews. You don't know whether you're doing a good job or whether they're eating a sandwich or whether they're yawning or laughing about, oh, they're so good, or wow, this person's so great. 50% of effective communication is gone in a telephone interview and in a telephone conversation. So now I don't ask you to raise your hand or to answer a yes to this next question, because almost all of us, if not everybody, has done this at some time or other. Have you ever sent an email or a text message that had a certain intent that you thought was really, really clear, and then when the receiver got that, they had a 180-degree different reaction to what your intent was? Yeah, it's happened to us all. It's highly embarrassing. So why does that happen? In text messaging and in emails, we only have 10% of effective communication available. We have words. We don't have the body to put nuances and nonverbals on the word interpretation, and we lose the voice, the tonality of the voice, so that when we do something that's a joke, we don't get the laugh and make it clear the way we're explaining that particular thing, so the receiver receives it as a joke. And what's really interesting about today's world is that we've created ways to deal with that in text messaging and in emails. So how do we flavor the words? Emojis, right? We use emojis to help. This is LOL. This is the little squinty face with the wink. This is the joke. My favorite is the little pile of poo. I guess it's triangular, not a heart shape. That little pile of poo, that's my favorite one in terms of the emojis that we use for communication. So my workshops are all based on 50% of effective behavior, 40% of effective behavior, and then how do you use the body and the voice in order to bring words to life? And with the little bit of time that we have left here, we're going to do a couple of the things that I do with inside those 50s and those 40%. So let's talk about, this is probably the best physical technique that I can share with everyone. It's something that we've been working with this in the theater since the late 1900s. There was a theorist that talked about this thing working in the positive energy zone versus the negative energy zone. And if you were, in fact, we can try this real quick. We have enough time to do this. Stand up one more time. Tilt the weight, center your weight. Now, almost imperceptibly, tilt the weight back onto the heel. Like it to move as fast as you can, forwards and backwards and to the sides, where you're walking and placing all of the weight on your heels. You kind of look like a penguin doing it. All right, so you got a hold of what that kind of feels like. Now center your weight and almost imperceptibly bring the weight forward onto the balls of your feet, the balls of your feet. And now try the same movement again, fast as you can, forwards, backwards, and to the sides. Ready? Go. A little bit faster, a little bit faster. All right, you can stop and you may have a seat again. And as you're moving to a seating position, let me ask you, which was easier, working on the heels of our feet or working on the balls of our feet? And it's pretty much a no-brainer. The theory that we use in the theater is that when we're on the balls of our feet, we're in what we call the negative energy zone. And when you're on the balls of when you're on the heels, you're in the negative energy zone. When you're on the balls of your feet, you're in the positive energy zone. We know when we place an actor on stage, if that actor is on their heels, the audience will stop watching them within seconds, and usually no more than 1 to 2 minutes before the audience gets disinterested in that actor, because what they're doing is sending their energy away from their audience. So this is something we do in real life all of the time. I'm going to tilt this back here a little bit more so you can kind of see me in my chair here. I'm going to go sideways so you can see me sitting in the negative energy zone. And if you look at this and evaluate where my physical energy, the most effective communicator that I have, where is my physical energy flowing and going? It's flowing back behind me here my back going into the chair. So if 50% of effective communication is about what we do physically, you're sending your physical communication away from your intended targets, that being your online audience or your face-to-face audience. It's moving away from you. Some of it is moving down my legs, but the majority of my negative energy, you can see this, you can move back a little further and you can see this. The majority of my physical energy, I can move my back off the chair. I can pick up my legs somewhat easily. There's something I can't get up. I can't pick up out of the chair. That's my derriere. So if you want to share your physical energy with your audience and you're in the negative energy zone, you should all come and sit underneath my chair here. More will come to you than if I don't talk with you. So in the virtual environment, you don't get to stand, but if you're standing and doing face-to-face communication, stand on the balls of your feet. When I do workshops and when I teach classes, I am on the balls of my feet all the time in my work of trying to communicate people because it sends the energy towards my intended targets. The same thing applies when you sit. So when you sit for an online talk, you want to find the sweet spot in the chair. Every chair has a different sweet spot. You want to find about the center of it. You want to bring yourself into alignment and then tilt yourself just a little bit forward. And the forward actually comes from the sternum. But I'd like you to imagine you kind of have this little string, and the string pulls you a little bit forward toward the intended target, i.e. your audience. So now let's pretend there's a job interview that I'm doing. I'm going to do it two different ways. Here's candidate number one. I want to thank you so much for seeing me. I'm really interested in this job. Let me start over again. Sorry, I got tongue-tied on that. I want to thank you so much for seeing me. I'm very, very interested in this job with Dow Chemical. I just finished my degree at Virginia Tech in biochemical engineering. I got to do an internship at the end of my junior year with Dow Chemical at that plant in West Virginia, and I really enjoyed the work that we were doing in the labs there. And I've now graduated with my degree in biochem from Virginia Tech, and this is kind of my dream job. So I would love to be considered for this. Also, my father worked for Dow Chemical for over 30 years, and I'm very interested in following in his footsteps. So there's candidate number one. I'm going to do candidate number two with the same script. I want to thank you so much for seeing me. I'm really interested in this job. I just graduated with my biochem degree from Virginia Tech, and this job with Dow Chemical is kind of my dream job. In my end of my junior year for the summer, I got to do an internship with Dow Chemical and was able to work in the lab at the plant in West Virginia. I really enjoyed that experience. Now that I've graduated, this is the job that I'd really like to take on right after graduation. Also, my father worked for Dow Chemical for over 30 years. So there's two different candidates. Did you notice a difference? Candidate number two was in the negative energy zone. They're kicked back, their energy is moving away. So it looks like that person, in terms of body language, 50% of effective communication, it looks like this person is disinterested in the job. And a lot of people interview for jobs in the negative energy zone because they're trying to act like they're not nervous. When we know that interviews make us really, really nervous. So use that energy in interviews, use the energy also in presentations to bring you into the positive energy zone, sternum going forward, because that's my target of communication. What's through that little camera, that 1/16 of an inch diameter lens that's embedded in glass on my device. That's your communication place. So that's where you want to send your energy to, right? So that's one of the physical things I wanted to talk about. I also want to talk about a couple other physical things. One of the things you want to be very careful about, especially if it's face-to-face communication, don't allow physical obstacles to be placed between you and the people that you're trying to talk to. Don't give a presentation behind a lectern if you're at a conference. You're cutting off 2/3 of your most powerful powerful instrument, the physical, if you stand behind a lectern. I have a head and then I'm cut off here because I'm holding onto a lectern. Then I have all my energy moving into a piece of wood or a piece of laminate. So if you work with a podium, don't. But you need a podium. How do you do that? work to the side of the podium. So you make yourself more accessible to the audience that's trying to watch you. 50% of effective communication happens through what one does physically. Be careful about placing obstacles between you and your intended targets. And again, this comes back more to face-to-face because thankfully, we don't do it in virtual communication. But let's take a look at this. Here's a physical obstacle. I've got this on my desk here, so I just kind of grabbed this thing. And I went to the Virginia Tech job fair this last week and watched people and graduating from the Pamplin School of Business at Virginia Tech work hard to try to find jobs. And they have not been able to do job career fairs for the last few years because of the pandemic. So the place was jam-packed with both recruiters and with students doing their best to try to find employment. And I can't tell you how many people I saw standing in line to wait to talk to a recruiter that had their folder with their resume being used as a shield. And again, it's because it conveys nervousness, but now my energy's going right here. I have an obstacle between this and my intended targets of communication. So be careful about placing obstacles between you and the people that you're talking to. The other thing that is really fun, something that we do in the theater, we spend a lot of time, when I direct shows, I spend a great deal of time working on the entrance. And if you remember back at the top of this hour, I was not on video when the seminar started. And I do that for a very specific reason, because an entrance in the theater is the opportunity for the character to really grab a hold of the audience. When I direct plays, it's not uncommon for me when I'm working with actors to work on an entrance. The very first rehearsal, we can do an entrance 10, 20, 30 times. And then a few weeks go by, we come back to it. I want to do it another 10, 20, 30 times before the actor's feeling really good about that entrance and the director is. Because the job of the actor in an entrance is to bring on an external world that the audience knows and can see and can relate with, and they're coming into a new world. So, for example, if it's raining and the actor's coming in from a rain to an interior, we do things costume-wise, props, we spray them down with water. The actor also has things that they do to try to convey that it's raining off stage or through that door before they enter. The same thing is true in virtual environments. You can really grab an audience, or you can disinterest an audience the way that you begin. And so I'm going to click off I'm going to turn off the video here, and I'm actually going to do a couple of different entrances, and I want you to watch me make these entrances and tell me who this person is. So there goes me into the turn off the video, and here's the new person. Tell me who this person is. Oh, hi. All right. So who's that candidate? If we were live, I'd ask you to give me some observations about them, but here's what I was trying to convey. They're distracted, they're nervous, they're caught off guard. And you're walking into a virtual room to do your presentation. That's the first impression you want to give? How do you think, what kind of an impression do you think that gives? It's a negative one. This person is scattered, this person is nervous, this person's self-esteem, they got shocked when they found and discovered that the camera was actually on, yada, yada, yada. All right, so that entrance made a difference. Let's do one more. Here's person number 2 walking into a virtual space. Good afternoon. So what is your observations about that particular human being? Hopefully it was this. Wow, they're serious. Wow, they're intense. Wow, they're kind of scary. If I do this in a face-to-face session where I can actually walk through the door and come at the person that I'm focused on with that kind of a look on my face, that person is intimidating and they're aggressive, and I've even been called the creeper before. All right, so what was going on body language that created that kind of an observation with me? Well, I was in alignment. The first person was not in alignment. The first person was kind of in what we call C curve, rounded shoulders, collapsed chest. The energy's moving away from you in the negative energy zone. I was nervous with my piece of paper. I was a little distracted about the computer, and then I made the discovery, oh my God, I'm on, hi. We did that. The second one, I tried to make some changes in body language, nonverbal work. I tried to come in and make it in the positive energy zone. I tried to, be present there. I tried to be looking straight at that camera. But one thing was missing, one thing only, that made that person not a very likable, not a very good person. So now let me do candidate 3. I'm going to do everything I did with candidate number 2, and I'm only going to make one change. So here's candidate number 3. Good afternoon. See a difference? It's subtle, but yet it's profound. Candidate number 3 wants to be there. And I was in alignment. I was in the positive energy zone a little bit forward, and I just did one other thing. I wanted to make a good impression when I walked into this room, so I put a smile on my face. All right. It lightens up the room. It welcomes the room. It's a very easy thing to do, and it's one of the best techniques I think I can share. Try to come into the room ready to be there, wanting to be there, and looking forward to talking to the people that you're going to be talking with. And see if it doesn't make a difference the way the top of your presentation or your talk or your sales pitch begins. There is a 4th candidate here. Let me do candidate number 4, and you can give an analysis of this person. Sup? I call him the sup guy, okay? And I ask you to give the evaluation. What's your analysis and evaluation of that particular candidate? Hopefully the answer is that person is too informal. That person is too casual. And that's the way, those kinds of behaviors, that's what you do when you're meeting a friend at a restaurant or the bar, or you're at home and some friend walks in the door and, sup, dude, what's happening, okay? In online work, there is expected protocols. These protocols are based on business protocols that were face-to-face that have now ported over into working online. There are also expectations in terms of acting for the camera. But you're supposed, there's a sense of formality because this is business. We're professionals. We're not at a party. So we're not that. This has to be a bit more professional and a little bit more formal. So think about that. How are you going to make an entrance at your next virtual meeting? So that's the only time. We only have a few more minutes left, and I do want to cover one other thing because we broke this down to 50%, 40%, and 10%. So I've kind of tried to give a couple of highlights within each area. I've been doing that, and that's my desire to finish this out. Let's talk about 40% of effective communication happens through what we do with the voice. And what I want to talk about, the example that I want to talk about is that for the most part, we're kind of a lazy society when it comes to using vocal communication. And one of our really bad habits in the United States is that we have a tendency to do what we call in the theater, falling off vocal energy at the ends of our sentences. So here's the examples of it. Hey man, how's it going? Oh, I'm fine, how are you? Oh, I'm okay. You want to go out to lunch? Oh, sure. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? I don't know. So you hear how that falls off at the ends of sentences. So when I get actors that come to Virginia Tech and we start to work with them in their sophomore year, we start working on the lines of William Shakespeare. And if an actor is programmed to fall off with that vocal energy at the ends of their sentences, here's how a line from Shakespeare can sound. Here's Hamlet's most famous line: to be or not to be? That is the question. And it almost turns this tragedy into a comedy. To be or not to be? That is the question, all right? Because Shakespeare was a really great writer, and he understood the English language in some respects better than almost anyone. And in the English language question, where do we put the most important words? In the English language, our structure is, where's the most important words? They're at the end of sentences. So an actor and a good presenter needs to learn to increase their vocal energy as they move through their sentences. So here's Hamlet's famous line with vocal energy: to be or not to be? That is the question. And hear the difference of it as opposed to be or not to be? That is the question. So I want you to take a look at the way that you're speaking when you're in these online formats. Are you driving through to the ends of your sentences? Or are you driving through to the ends of your sentences? Also pay attention when we're on the phone. The place where we do this all the time is on the phone. Hi, Greg Justice, Department of Theater and Cinema, Virginia Tech. Well, look at how boring that is if you were the listener on the other end. Hi, it's Greg Justice, Department of Theater and Cinema, Virginia Tech. Boy, there's a lazy human being. There's a bad communicator. So I don't answer my phone like this. Hi, this is Greg Justice. I don't do it that way, but I answer my voicemail. And when I answer the phone is, hi, this is Greg Justice, Department of Theater and Cinema, Virginia Tech. And look at the difference vocally when you add vocal energy, articulation, pronunciation, and that kind of stuff to the line, and you're able to increase the vocal energy. So there's kind of some highlights of what I do in my work when I work with people, both virtually and face-to-face. So I hope some of these techniques were of interest to you. We have a couple of minutes. If there are some questions here, let me open up my questions box. There's one there, but I don't see what it is. Virtual participants fear talking in the group. How do we get them to engage? That's a really great question. And I think I don't think there really is a proven technique for that. We're still in the process of trying to fledge this out and figure it out. I have faculty friends that do it by intimidation. They do it because they're great. Others do it by pleading. One of the things that I do in the classroom is when I get people to talk, when I get people to acknowledge what's going on in the classroom, I praise them. Because usually you can break an audience into 3 different categories. There are those that really want to be there. They're anxious and they're excited about it. They want to learn. On the complete opposite side are those that have to be there. They're not excited about it. They don't want to be there. And you got this large group in the middle that haven't made a decision. And at some time or other in the presentation, this middle group, your majority of people are going to move one direction or move the other direction. So giving attention to those that are giving you verbal replies, answers, those kinds of things, that's what can make everybody in the middle, oh, they seem like they're learning. They seem like they're having a good time. I'm going to go that direction rather than the direction of all these that are sitting here like this, silent and not doing anything. It makes, when I teach a class, it makes a world of difference, because if it's an extended group where you're touching base with them over time, everybody in that middle will go one way or go the other way. All right. Thank you, Debbie, for your compliment there and the answer. There's one more. The hardest part is when you can't see your audience. You just seem to be talking to the screen. If you want to bring me back for another workshop, we had originally talked about this, but I know your schedule's really, really booked. One of my sessions can be about this virtual environment and how you deal with the screen. And one of the first things you learn as an actor when you're taking acting for the camera, the first thing that you learn in acting for the camera is the camera is the actor's best friend. And this is why it makes it hard for online communication, because there's very few people that get that. And if you want to go back and look at the recording of this, where was I looking for about 80% of this delivery for this 1 hour? You'll see I'm looking at a 1/16 of an inch diameter piece of glass at the top of my MacBook Pro computer screen right there. And that's how you communicate with people. Don't communicate with people looking at their faces on the screen. If you're communicating to people, and especially in a job interview, if someone asks you a question and you're looking down at the bottom of the screen to answer their question, from their perspective, it does not look like you're looking at them. From their perspective, you are looking down. So you must learn to get your face up and give your focus to that camera. And during this workshop, 80% of the time I spoke, I'm looking right at that camera, because that's the magical little communication technology that we have that has glass and wires and a camera. It heads off into the world of the internet, and then it comes into your space, and I can have my physical presence there in your space. How do you teach your eyes to look at that little tiny camera on your device? Get a Post-it note, write the words "look here," put a little arrow on it, stick it at the top of your computer, or if your computer's on the bottom, if your device is on the bottom of the computer, put a look here, some kind of flag that teaches your eyes and trains your eyes to get up there to deliver to the screen. There, we got 1 minute left. Anything else? Okay, so I just want to thank you again for having me. Again, thanking Michelle and Sharon and Tim and everybody involved with this work. I hope I gave you a couple of things that you might be able to work on for the next time you do some communication. I do want, last words is, be careful about taking on too much. Don't do everything that I did on Monday. Pick one thing and work on it for the next couple of weeks, because you're trying to change behavioral traits, and changing behavioral traits take time. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll turn it back over to Michelle.
Greg, that was just fantastic. I learned so much. I always do, and I think the audience did as well. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you, and we really appreciate you being with us today. And thanks to all of you who joined us online. And Tim, we'll turn it back over to you.
I'm sorry, Greg and Michelle, thank you both very much. Greg, that really was a great presentation. We're seeing a lot of messages coming in from the audience echoing this as well. So I think the people you can't see are giving you a standing ovation right now. Thank you again for that.
Thank you very much. And thanks for those nice comments, folks. I hope it was helpful.
Absolutely.
To that point, folks, Greg has been kind enough to share his information, his contact information here as well. We also have some information shared here from CMR, and you can visit more and find out more on the CMR Learning Library at the address showing here on the screen as well. I'm going to move on, but if you didn't get any of these, I can always connect you with these addresses offline as well. Just wanted to end as we wrap up. I wanted to invite you all to take a quick look at what our Q4 L10 calendar is looking like. You can visit the L10 website and get more information on this and the upcoming programs. Part of what's there is our e-learning module, our micro-learning e-learning lounge. We have 15 micro-learning modules in the e-learning lounge, so please do visit the L10 website to check out those and learn more. And finally, I'm going to end with an invitation to join us all again. We'll be back here for our next L10 webinar next Thursday, September 22nd, talking about learning, measurement, and evaluation. You can find out more information and register here at this address, l-10.org/webinars. Here's the address for the Self-Directed Learning Library, where today's recording is going to be housed shortly. And again, I'm going to send you an email about an hour from now with a link to today's recording. And finally, there's my email address. If I can help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Let me send out final thank yous again to our speaker, Greg Justice. Greg, thank you again. To our sponsors, CMR Institute and Michelle O'Connor for joining us, and to all of you for your time, attention, and participation. Let me wish everybody a good rest of your day, a good weekend, and we will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye, everyone.